Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, monomole wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so very delighted that you would join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcast. And please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Our guest today is Jacob Eckeberger. He is here to celebrate bad dad moves. Before we invite Jacob into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. You can also find us on Pinterest and on YouTube. And of course, we would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can download our free online magazine from our website. You can also check out some of the great content that we are producing. So much content that we can't fit it all on to the podcast. And some of it is being published on our website and on our social. So be sure to connect with us. We love you, and we love that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Join us right now from the great state of Minnesota. Our guest is here today to celebrate terrible dancing by dads from all over the world. The name of the book is Bad Dad Moves. Our guest is the author, Jacob Eckeberger. Hey, Jacob, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Jed. I'm good. How are you holding up?
I'm doing really well. I'm looking forward to being able to get out on the dance floor and do some bad dad moves in a few weeks or months myself.
Nice.
Tell us about this book.
Yeah. Well, I can't help but write from our family's experiences. And so my first book was all about the cringeworthy jokes that I tell that my kids roll their eyes, but I know they secretly love. And this one that just came out on May 24th is about the dance parties that we have in our house while I'm doing dishes or while we're cleaning a room or whatever. I started it mostly because that was how I could get my kids to do things, as if I made it fun. And so I'd turn stuff into a dance party or whatever. But also, I've just always loved it. I've always wished I was a better dancer than I actually am. And anyone who's in my kitchen typically sees it. Although I don't break it out in public too many times. But it's a regular part of our life.
Yeah. Dancing is one of those things. It's like that kind of universal thing, even within cultures and faith traditions where it's frowned upon. I was at a Christian concert once, and I remember the lead singer came up on stage and he said, all right, I know all of you in this one particular faith tradition, I know you can't dance, but we're moving together, so that's choreography. It's not dance. So just
there
move,
you go.
let the Spirit move you.
Yeah. Well, and I love that little mention is another thing that is really drove the inspiration for this book, and that's connection. The idea of an excuse to do something together and to spend our energy creating memories and connecting with one another. And I mean, you know that as a performer too, with your background, so much of what we need in life is a meaningful connection. And there are lots of great books out there that do lots of things that help people open up their eyes and their perspective to new things. And even in those areas, that's about connection too. Mm-hmm. So whether it's a silly book like mine or a really serious book that's more affirming of a different perspective that's been marginalized or another issue, it's about connecting to people. It's about connecting to ideas and to the bigger world around us. And whether it's choreography or actually dance, I like to think that it's all about connection in the end.
You mentioned your first book that celebrated bad dad jokes and bad dad moves. And we're talking about connection, and one of the things that I think we really need to become comfortable with if we want to truly be connected with our kids or with others is the willingness, the ability to become vulnerable. Every dad who does a bad dad joke understands that the joke is incredibly lame. And we know that when we're delivering it, we're probably going to get eyes rolled. We're probably just going to get, oh, that's so stupid. But we do it because it's like we know that this is a way to connect with our kids. When we dance those stupid dance moves, we're probably accentuating the awfulness of a dance to be, and so it's, here it is, this, and a dad typically, and again, don't want to be with stereotypes, but typically it's that big, strong father figure. And here it is, dad's like, okay, yeah, I'm the big, strong father figure guy, but I'm willing to be laughed at. I'm willing to do these jokes that I know are going to land like a lead balloon because I want to be connected with you.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, my family, growing up, sarcasm and bad jokes was like a love language for them. And I can tell you exactly the jokes and in the exact order that my dad will tell anytime you go to a restaurant with him. The things I'll say to the server, the things I'll say to you, the fake grab for the check at the end, and then being surprised by the amount and handing it back. Like all of that stuff is stuff that it's I mean, kind of to steal your word, it's choreographed, and that he's done it so much, and that's bled into my DNA too, of just every time my kids say, Dad, I'm hungry, I say, hey, hungry, I'm Dad, or whatever. And like those sorts of things are just about, they're just built into how I do things and how I respond. I do think that there's an element of connection that we all long for that's less about the specific act or the specific situation and more about how we feel in those moments. I was listening to a recent episode of this podcast and I cannot remember the author's name, so forgive me, but the book was your first book.
Yes. Francesco Sedeta.
Yes. And I love the sentiment in that conversation around it's maybe less about remembering that first book, but more about just remembering how you feel in that moment and that, the way that we make each other feel in a sort of special situation like that. It's the same in my mind with bad jokes and silly dancing, my kids might remember my silly dance moves, but hopefully long after I'm gone, they'll remember how I made them feel and how I was trying to get them to laugh or giggle or see something really joyful in life through it all. Yeah. So.
It's interesting, and I'm trying to mush these things up in my mind, so it's probably going to come out horribly, but I was just speaking to Rajani Laraka, and she's an amazing author, and one of the things that she has said in our past interviews is that anytime she writes, it starts with an emotion. What do I want my audience to feel? And I've spoken to different stage performers, the same thing. When I'm getting ready to do my show, what do I want my audience to feel? I just read, and I don't know why I read it, but I read this article about people who went to the Taylor Swift concert here in Boston. Oh. One of the 200,000 people that stood when we're in the rain watching this show. And it's really like so many of them, they don't remember what actually happened in the show. They don't remember what songs were sung, but they remember the feeling that they had. They remember the excitement and the joy they felt. I think we don't. I don't think we count emotion. Take that, hold that in as much a place of importance as we should.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point. And some of us, like, I struggle to understand what I'm feeling a lot of times and to put words to it. My wife, is very much the opposite. Like, she is so in touch with how she feels in every moment. She expresses it in in the fullness of what it deserves. And my response, since I don't know a lot of times how I feel about an emotion, I'll kind of shut it down and force myself to deal with it later. But I think that there is this gift that comes with being able to be in touch with your emotions, to celebrate them, to give them the full space that they need to be expressed. And whether that's a joyful emotion or a sadness or an anger, whatever that is, I think that's really important. And the emotions that we create in folks, especially as a parent, that can also give us a lot of grace in how we parent, and that, you know, I'm gonna mess up more times than I can count. I've already dropped the ball several times with my kids this morning on their way out the door to school. But in the end, I'm hoping a lot of that is still wet cement, and the stuff that they start to remember are the emotions of, like, they feel loved, they feel cared for, they feel supported and heard. And if there's a way that I can communicate those things in my parenting, maybe it's okay if I'm not perfect, you know, as long as, like, at the end of the day, they feel those things from me. And a lot of that I'm still learning. My kids are 7 and almost 4. And they are incredible, and they are very much every bit of kid, energy wise, and emotionally, you know, developmentally, all of that stuff. They are a 10 on everything. And sometimes it can be overwhelming, and sometimes I don't respond as well as I could. But if I can create these moments where I reaffirm them, where I sit with them in their emotions, or I help them express joy through one way or another, hopefully that'll sort of smooth out all of those rough edges of imperfection of who I am as a human, and trying to live and parent alongside them. So, yeah, emotions are a huge, huge part of our connection to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, as you're speaking, I'm thinking back, we've had many, many books and authors come on talking about EQ, emotional intelligence.
Sure.
And how we can help our kids become more in touch with their feelings and understand, and being able to put words to describe, to know the difference. You know, I've used the example, my son, anytime something wasn't feeling right, it became anger. So disappointment was anger, sadness was anger, confusion was anger, and helping him understand the differences was really important. But, you know, with a lot of kids, it's like, I don't want to sit down and talk about this again. Oh.
Right.
Do you think that we can take bad dad moves and help our kids better learn their emotions and put labels and understandings and names on emotions through bad dancing?
I mean, maybe. I think that there's always an opportunity, I think, to squeeze in some bad dancing. You know, I feel like that will make life better no matter what, and especially if you're bad at it. But I mean, I do think that part of what the gift of kids in my life is that when they're in a moment where they feel joy, or they feel like their body needs to express some sort of happiness, it doesn't matter where they're at, they're going to do it, you know, and they don't quite follow social norms of, oh, we don't do that here, or we don't dance here, or, you know, whether that's in the grocery store or a coffee shop or whatever, or if it's at the playground, and my first thought is, oh gosh, who's watching, you know, but their thought is, I've got this thing in me I want to express, and I want to do it through dancing. I think that maybe there's an element of us just affirming and reaffirming those things, because those are easier emotions to process, right? Like the joy, the happiness, all of that stuff is easier to encourage. And maybe there's an opportunity for us to sort of say, on the other side of that pendulum, when you feel those other things, it's okay to recognize that and to express those things in the way they need to, and then to investigate, why am I feeling that way? The other thing too is, I think as adults, that joy can be very much a lesson that we can learn from them, of being in touch with our emotions and expressing them, regardless of if we feel a concern about other people watching us and we don't want to dance or whatever. It's kind of like at a wedding you go to, right? There's someone needs to break in the dance floor first to like welcome everybody else, and then it becomes a party and everybody is on their feet. And sometimes we can learn that from our kids. And this book is sort of set up to where at the beginning, the child that you meet, who's trying to connect with you as a reader, is saying, does your dad act like this? When they're doing dishes or when they're vacuuming, or in an elevator and they hear like elevator music, does he just break out and dance? 'Cause it's weird. And I've been trying to get him to stop. And so the kid sort of personifies that, like, societal expectation of like, no, like, don't, let's dampen that. But towards the end of the book, there's this reality of, well, you're never going to stop it, so you might as well join, and you can make up your own dances, and you could figure out how to do belly drums along with a beat, or, you can twirl, you can slide, you can pump your rock fists, like whatever it is. And there's this sort of like, opening up that happens between the child and the father, recognizing that maybe life is better when we embrace those things and when we choose to express them. And it's not that I do it perfectly, but it's maybe I can practice it and get better at it, as the author. So, yeah.
Hey, obviously this is a great book for families where the dad is goofy and whatnot, but there's a lot of families out there where the dad isn't present.
Sure.
Or where the mom or woman is kind of more like telling the bad dad jokes and the bad dad moves. Is this a book that those families can also embrace and get something out of?
I think so. I always want to feel like when I write something that it could be for everybody. But I do also want to recognize that like we're approaching Father's Day right now. And for some people, it's a really hard day. Just the reality of what life what they've experienced through life. They don't have a joyful image of a father. And I think that in those instances, just like, so many other safe places, what they repeat and for those people is, if you need, extra space to avoid those things, to separate yourself from that, please do so. And so in those moments, I could see how this book could maybe not be helpful for them. And maybe it's more harmful. Maybe it's causing, maybe anger or regret or, whatever, other emotion is around that, of them just not having this sort of experience of a father in this way. For other caregivers and folks who are caring for little ones in their life, or whether it's a father or someone on the gender spectrum, I think that there's an element of, that person in our life that is always trying to make us laugh or always trying to bring us into a joyful moment. I think that can translate. But it is, just the phrasing of dad in there could be something that is more harmful than good for some people. And that's unfortunately probably the case.
But that's the beauty of a bookshop or a library, is because if this title isn't doing it for you, we get all these other titles that might.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm hope, because I'm guessing that if you are a biological father and you're not present, you're not being a dad, you're probably not listening to the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Sure.
But I would love to think that there might be a dad out there or a biological father out there who's not being present, who might see your book or might happen to come across this podcast, who will sit down and listen and think, well, maybe I want to get involved in my kid's life because, boy, these two guys really sound like they love being a dad.
That would be beautiful. Yeah. I mean, the other benefit of a book like this and why I wanted to write a book like this is that it sort of scripts out a scenario for you to engage with your kids. You know, there's the back half of the book are all of these dance moves that the child and the father are making up together. And so there's lots of opportunities to stop reading, turn on your Spotify and try out your belly drums or try out your slides or whatever it is. And I know for me as a tired parent at the end of the day, I absolutely love story time, but sometimes, I need a book that will just like take all the thinking out of it for me and just present an opportunity that's joy-filled and an opportunity to connect with my kid. And so I'm hoping that this book gives folks that chance. So
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, Jacob, where can we go to find out more about Bad Dad Moves and also your great book about bad dad jokes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can pick up both of those books. The first one is My Dad's Jokes Are Very Terribly, Awfully, Painfully Bad. And then this one is Bad Dad Moves. You can buy them anywhere that you buy books, which is reminds us of a remarkable time that we're in. For Bad Dad Moves, if you want to check out a few of the pages, download some coloring sheets and things like that, you can go to baddadmoves.net. And get all of that stuff there. Those coloring sheets are for free. So if you're looking for another way to sort of connect with your kid, I hope that helps. So.
Yeah. Well, we've had a great time speaking to the author and choreographer of Bad Dad Moves. Our guest has been Jacob Eckeberger. Hey, Jacob, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Jed. Really appreciate it.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Dorena Williamson. She'll be here. We hope you'll be here too. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Jacob Eckeberger. Please be sure to check out Bad Dad Moves. Also want to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Madison Dieris, Monica Rivera Sosa, Ann O'Leary, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.